Welcome to Awesome Chapter. Today, we are jumping into a world you probably didn't even know existed.
Competitive memorization.
Exactly. It's this whole universe where, the stakes are incredibly high, the competitors are, well, they're intense.
And the trophy is, without a doubt, the strangest piece of silverware you will ever see.
Okay, you have to describe this thing.
Right. So picture the U.S. Memory Championship. You've got these fluorescent lights, this kind of hushed electric silence, TV cameras everywhere, all pointed at a clock.
Total pressure cooker.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And among these warriors of the mind, that's what the founder, Tony Buzan, calls them, you have the defending champ, Ram Cully.
Mm.
But the trophy, it's this two-tiered, just bizarre thing.
Go on.
It's a silver hand with gold nail polish, and it's holding a royal flush.
Mm.
And then underneath that, for some reason, are three bald eagles.
Three bald eagles, of course.
It's completely ridiculous. But
Yeah.
at the same time, they take it deadly seriously.
And right in the middle of all this, sitting among these absolute mental athletes, is the last person on earth you'd expect to see.
Right. Our source material for this whole exploration starts with this journalist who is, by his own admission, completely forgetful.
Like, forgetting your car keys forgetful.
Oh, way beyond that. Forgetting his car keys, forgetting anniversaries. He even admits he has to Google whether to use its or its.
So a regular person.
A profoundly regular person. And that's the setup, isn't it? How does someone like that, someone who literally Googled highest IQ, trying to find the secret to genius, how does he end up competing against the greatest trained memories in the world?
It's an incredible premise. And this entire journey into, well, the art and science of memory is all based on one phenomenal book.
That book is Moonwalking with Einstein, The Art and Science of Remembering Everything by Joshua Foer.
And our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack the stories and the science that Foer uncovered.
Exactly. We want to get at what these elite mental athletes can tell us about the hidden potential inside, all of us. We're going to uncover these ancient tricks that can turn an ordinary memory into something extraordinary.
And we'll also explore the flip side. What happens when you remember too much? Or when you can't form any new memories at all?
It really challenges this whole idea of fixed mental limits.
Okay, let's unpack that. I think the best place to start is with that flip side you mentioned. What happens when the ability to forget, which is so essential, is just gone?
Right. And that brings us to the famous case of S. It's a story that just immediately turns our whole concept of a perfect memory on its head.
So who was S?
His full name was Solomon Shereshevsky, and his story is, well, it's really the foundation of modern memory research. It all starts in Moscow around May of 1928.
Okay.
S walks into the office of a pioneering Russian neuropsychologist named A.R. Luria. Now, S was a journalist, and his editor was just furious with him.
Why? For being a bad journalist?
For the opposite, in a way. The editor was mad because S never took any notes, ever. In these big editorial meetings, all the other reporters are scribbling furiously, trying to get down names, facts, deadlines.
And S is just sitting there.
Just watching and listening. So one day, the editor just snaps, he calls him out on it, and S, completely confused, just repeats the entire meeting back to him, word for word.
No way.
And not just that meeting, he could recall assignments and conversations in perfect detail, sometimes years later. Luria realized pretty quickly he was dealing with a cognitive phenomenon he had never, ever seen before.
So what was the secret? What was going on in his brain?
Well, the root of this staggering memory was a very severe and totally involuntary form of synesthesia.
Synesthesia, that's when your senses get crossed, right? Like you hear a color or taste a shape.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But for S, it was on another level. Luria studied him for 30 years and found that for S, every single word, every sound, even abstract concepts triggered this immediate, automatic, multisensory cascade.
So not just one cross sense, but all of them firing at once.
A whole second universe of sensory input constantly blooming in his mind's eye. He couldn't turn it off.
That sounds exhausting. Can you give an example of what that was like for him?
Yeah, the examples are fascinating. If you said the word green to him, he didn't just understand it as a concept. He would see a specific textured image, like a green flower pot.
Okay.
The word red would cause him to see a man in a red shirt walking towards him. Numbers weren't just symbols, they were entire personalities.
Personality?
Oh, yeah. The number 1 for him was a proud, well-built man. 2 was a high-spirited woman. And a number like 87 wasn't just 2 digits. It was this bizarre composite image of a fat woman and a man twirling his mustache.
That is unbelievably specific. So his trick for remembering things was basically just to place these incredibly rich images along a mental path.
Precisely. He was using a kind of involuntary, rudimentary memory palace, and he could just mentally stroll back down that path and see all the images again. They were so powerful, so robust, that they often felt physically real to him.
What do you mean physically rich?
Laurier recorded these instances where S could actually affect his own body just by thinking. He could make his own pulse race just by imagining himself running for a train, with all the sounds and the feeling of breathlessness.
Oh.
He even claimed he could abolish pain. He described the pain from a dentist's drill as tiny orange-red thread. And by just visualizing himself cutting that thread, making it smaller and smaller, the pain would actually go away.
That really does sound like a superpower, but the lesson Foer pulls from this is that it wasn't a blessing at all, was it?
Not in the slightest. And that's the crucial insight. In our modern abstract world, S's memory was a crippling constraint
Why? How so?
because he struggled profoundly with abstraction. Think about it. He could only truly understand what he could visualize.
And you can't visualize everything.
Exactly. How do you visualize a concept like infinity
Oh.
or nothing? He tried. He described something as a dense cloud of smoke-colored steam. And nothing was just a thinner, more transparent cloud. He couldn't grasp the underlying philosophical idea.
His brain was just too busy creating literal images for every single word.
Right, so if he tried to read a poem, or even just a simple story, his mind would get completely bogged down. Every single word would trigger this sensory explosion, and it would just derail the whole narrative.
I can't even imagine what metaphors would do to him.
It was a disaster. The phrase weigh one's words, for example, meant he would literally see a pair of scales with a tiny man struggling to balance words on them. He couldn't get the figurative meaning.
So he was professionally kind of a failure.
He really was. Despite this raw talent, he couldn't hold down a normal job. Analysis, planning, even just a fluid conversation was difficult. He eventually had to make a living as a stage performer, a kind of theatrical curiosity. He was trapped. He literally remembered too much.
So the big lesson from S is that forgetting is actually one of the most important things our brain does.
It's absolutely essential. Our working memory is designed to be a filter, a ruthless, efficient, predictive filter. If we were all like S, constantly bombarded by the synesthetic image of every single word we hear, we'd never be able to think abstractly.
You'd be drowning in irrelevant information.
Drowning. Our brains are prediction machines. They evolved to filter out the noise, all the millions of daily sensations and sounds that probably won't matter for our survival. We're designed to get the idea of an elephant, not the full, overwhelming sensory experience every single time.
And S was missing that filter.
He was. And that filter is what allows for abstract thought, for planning, for everything that makes us, functional. The very thing that made him a memory marvel was what held him back.
Okay, so we've seen the burden of perfect recall. Now let's pivot to the complete opposite extreme. The people who can't form any new conscious memories at all.
The amnesiacs. Specifically, two medical cases that really blew open our understanding of how memory is structured in the brain.
EP and HM.
That's right. HM, or Henry Molaison, had this experimental surgery for his epilepsy back in 1953, where a surgeon removed parts of his medial temporal lobes. And EP had similar brain damage, but from a virus, herpes simplex.
And in both cases, it created these gaping symmetrical holes in the exact same region of the brain.
Right where the hippocampus is. And the result for both of them was a very profound, very specific kind of amnesia.
Anterograde amnesia.
Exactly. They lost the ability to form new declarative memories, new conscious memories, but, and this is key, they kept their old, distant memory.
Which is a phenomenon known as Ribot's law, right? The idea that recent memories are the most fragile.
Precisely. The older, more consolidated memories stay put. But for EP and HM, the present was just lost the moment it passed. They couldn't convert any new information from short-term to long-term storage.
The details of EP's life are they're heartbreaking, but also so strange.
They really are. He lived in this state of perpetual surprise. The research coordinator, a woman named Jen Frasino, met with him over 200 times. And every single time, he greeted her like a complete stranger.
The same handshake, the same polite introduction every time.
Every time. And because he could hold on to information for maybe a minute or so, that famous magical number 7 capacity of working memory we'll get to, he could have a conversation. But as soon as he was distracted, that information was gone, wiped, forever.
So he's sort of stuck in time. He remembers Franklin Roosevelt, but gets current presidents confused.
He has no new reference points,
Mhm.
no personal story anchoring him to the present moment.
The book makes this really powerful comparison between EP's state and an experiment by a chronobiologist named Michel Sifry.
Yes, the cave experiment. Sifry lived in total isolation in a cave with no clocks, no sunlight for 2 months just to study the body's internal clock.
And what happened to his sense of time?
It completely collapsed. His days just merged into this one continuous, indistinguishable blob. When they finally brought him out, he was convinced only a month had passed.
He lost a month.
He lost a month. And that gives us this crucial lesson. Monotony collapses time. Novelty unfolds it. For EP, who has no new conscious memories being created, his entire life is monotony. His internal timeline just stops at his injury. The present doesn't exist for him.
It raises such profound questions about identity. I mean, if you can't form new memories of facts, what's left? Can you still learn?
And this is the second and maybe the most critical lesson from the amnesiacs. It turns out that memory is not monolithic. There isn't just one system.
The damage to their hippocampus revealed this sharp divide.
A physical divide between two fundamental types of memory.
Which are what, exactly?
They are declarative or explicit memory. That's your conscious facts. The color of your car, the capital of France, what you had for breakfast.
Oh.
And then there's non-declarative or implicit memory.
And that's the unconscious stuff.
Exactly. Skills, habits, motor learning, conditioning, like riding a bike. The amnesiacs lost the first one completely, but they kept the second.
The classic example of this is the star tracing task with HM.
Right. It's a really difficult motor task, tracing a 5-pointed star while only looking at its reflection in a mirror. And every day, HM got better at it. His brain was clearly learning.
But he had no idea.
No conscious recollection at all. Every single day, he would honestly claim that he'd never seen the task before in his life. His skill improved unconsciously, completely separate from his conscious mind.
Which proved that our motor skills and habits are stored somewhere else.
In different brain structures, like the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, totally independent of the hippocampus.
And EP showed this too, but in a more subtle way, with something called priming.
Yes, priming is another type of implicit memory. The researchers would flash words on a screen too quickly for him to consciously register them. But later, when they tested him, he was much better at identifying those same words when flashed quickly again.
So his brain remembered the pattern even if he didn't.
Exactly. His brain had been primed. It remembered the associations, even though his consciousness was a total blank slate.
Which means a huge part of our daily life is guided by these non-declarative systems that we're not even aware of.
That is the astonishing part.
Mm.
Think about EP going for his daily walk around the neighborhood. He couldn't tell you his address. He couldn't point you in the direction of the ocean.
But he wouldn't get lost?
He could walk his habitual route perfectly, relying purely on that ingrained, non-declarative, habitual memory. The comfort of a familiar turn, the predictability of the sidewalk, it's all implicit.
So a lot of our personality, our sense of self, is tied up in these unconscious memories.
That's right. Our automatic reactions, our comfort levels,
Yeah.
it's all off limits to the conscious brain, but it's still there. The hippocampus is just the gateway for new declarative memories. It's not the whole story of who we are.
And understanding that difference is how we can start to see how the mental athletes get around the limits of the normal system.
It's the key. It brings us right back to our forgetful journalist, Joshua Foer, and the ancient technique he had to master.
The memory palace.
Right. But to learn it, he needed a coach. And he found probably the most interesting character in the whole book, Ed Cook.
Describe Ed. He sounds unique.
He is. He's this Oxford-educated aesthete, a PhD researcher in cognitive science. But he treats memory techniques like this sophisticated performance art.
Like a party trick.
A very high-level party trick. He uses them as bar games. He'll bet a bottle of champagne that no one can give him a number so long that he can't memorize it on the spot.
So Ed's job was to demystify all this for Foer.
Exactly. To introduce him to the core principle behind all mnemonics, which is something called elaborative encoding.
Okay, what is elaborative encoding? Why is it so important?
Ed's explanation is just beautiful. He says, look, our memories evolved for the ancient world, not the modern one. Our brains are fantastic at remembering spatial information.
Like a hunter-gatherer needing to remember where the berries are or where they saw a lion.
Precisely. We remember what is spatial, what is unusual, and what is sensory. What we did not evolve to remember are abstract, meaningless lists. Phone numbers, binary digits, random names. That stuff is forgettable because it has no context.
So the key lesson here is that the memory palace works because it hijacks that ancient system.
It forces your brain to take that boring, abstract, forgettable information and translate it into the language your brain already speaks fluently.
The language of bizarre, emotional, spatial stories.
Exactly. It leverages the brain's incredible spatial navigation system, the same system EP still used to walk his neighborhood, and uses it to organize knowledge.
So how do you actually do it? How do you build a memory palace, this method of loci?
It's surprisingly straightforward. You need two components, images and places, or loci.
Images are the things you want to remember.
And the places are the structure where you store those images. The key is that the location has to be somewhere you know intimately. Your childhood home is perfect. Or your daily commute, someplace you can walk through in your mind's eye with no effort.
And the rules for the images, they're not just about making a mental picture. They have to be shocking.
They have to be. And this goes all the way back to the original source text for all of this, an anonymous Roman rhetoric guide called the Ad Horinum.
And what does it say?
It gives these very specific, very counterintuitive rules. It says the images you create must be exceptional, base, dishonorable, extraordinary, unbelievable, or laughable.
So you have to go for the lewd and the bizarre. Why?
Because the mind doesn't pay attention to what's ordinary. It's designed to filter that out.
Ah.
If you want to remember to buy a loaf of bread and you just picture a loaf of bread on your kitchen counter.
You'll forget it in a second. Bread belongs on a kitchen counter.
Right. But if you picture a giant, purple, sweating lobster singing opera while sitting on that counter, your brain snaps to attention. You create these emotional, perceptual hooks.
You're not just seeing it, you're hearing it, maybe even smelling it. The more hooks, the more secure the memory.
You're essentially training yourself to be a synesthete. You're forcing that kind of multi-sensory overload that S experienced naturally.
So what was the first list Ed gave for?
It was this ridiculous 15-item shopping list. The first item was pickled garlic, and the first locus was Foer's parents' driveway. Ed told him, you can't just see it. You have to visualize a huge, disgusting jar of it. You have to smell it so strongly your eyes watered, you have to taste it.
And the next item?
Cottage cheese. And the image for that involved the supermodel Claudia Schiffer, swimming in the buff, dripping with dairy, right there in the entryway of the house.
Okay, yeah. You're not going to forget that.
You're really not. The combination of the solid spatial marker, the locus, and the bizarre, multisensory, emotionally charged image, it creates this indelible link.
And for his first attempt, it worked.
Immediately. The list also had things like elk sausages and a skin-toned catsuit purring in the hallway. And he recalled all 15 items perfectly, just by mentally walking back through his parents' house.
That must have been the moment he knew it was real.
That's the light bulb moment. The skeptical journalist realizes this isn't some magic trick. It's a conscious, deliberate strategy to exploit our brain's evolutionary strengths.
Okay, so to really understand the science behind why this works so well, we need to look at modern psychology, starting with George Miller.
Yes, Miller's 1956 paper, The Magical Number 7 plus or minus 2, is a landmark. It's really the paper that established this fundamental architectural limit on our working memory.
This is the brain's RAM, basically, the buffer where you process information consciously.
Right. And it can only hold about 7 distinct, unrelated chunks of information at one time. If you try to remember a random 10-digit phone number, you feel that ceiling hit almost immediately.
But the whole point of a memory championship is that people blow way past that limit. They go from 7 digits to thousands. How is that possible if the hardware is fixed?
And that question brings us to K. Anders Ericsson. He's the leading researcher on expertise and the guy who developed what's called skilled memory theory. He and his colleague Bill Chase ran this classic experiment in the early 80s on an undergraduate student they just called SF. Now, SF started out with a normal digit span, about 7.
Average.
Completely average. But after 250 hours of rigorous training, over 2 years, he expanded his ability to remember random digits by a factor of 10. He could remember a string of over 80 digits.
That's insane. That just shattered the idea that memory capacity is some fixed, innate thing.
It did. But here is the key lesson from that experiment. SF did not increase his general working memory. His hardware didn't change. When they tested him on, say, random consonants, he was right back down to about 7.
So he didn't get a brain upgrade. He just learned a very specific skill.
He became an expert in memorizing digits, and he did it through a process called chunking.
Explain how chunking works, because it's not just about cramming things in fast.
Not at all. It's much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
SF happened to be a competitive runner, so he learned to group strings of 4 random digits into a single meaningful chunk, a running time. So if he saw the sequence 3492, he didn't see 4 random numbers. He saw 3 minutes, 49.2 seconds, which is a record mile time. If he saw 1776, he saw the Declaration of Independence. He was converting the abstract into the contextual.
So instead of 80 separate meaningless items, he's only holding 20 meaningful chunks.
Exactly. He wasn't making his short-term memory box bigger. He was building this vast pre-cached library in his long-term memory that he could access instantly.
And this is what the chess masters do.
It's the perfect illustration. Expert chess players can glance at a complex game board for just a few seconds and then reconstruct it almost perfectly. We're talking 25, 30 pieces, way beyond the magical number 7.
But the key test is when you show them a random board, right?
That's the definitive proof. When they were shown a board with pieces arranged randomly in a way that could never happen in a real game, their memory just plummeted, right back down to 7, plus or minus 2. No better than a total novice.
The lesson is so profound, they don't have better brains, they just have better, highly specific software.
That's the core of Erickson's work. Expertise is memory. Experts don't remember isolated facts. They remember things in context. Chess masters have this huge library of patterns stored in their long-term memory. They don't see 30 individual pieces. They see as Sicilian defense or a queen's gambit.
They see the chunks.
They see the chunks, and that pattern recognition lets them instantly see the most promising moves. The amazing memory is a byproduct of their expertise, not the cause of it.
Which brings us to the how. If memory is a skill, you have to practice it. But not just any practice, it has to be deliberate practice.
Right, and deliberate practice, as Erickson defines it, is not fun. It's the highly focused, goal-oriented, often grueling work that top performers do to constantly improve.
Most of us, when we learn a skill, we reach a plateau.
We reach what's called the autonomous phase. The skill becomes automatic and we just stop getting better. Think about driving a car. Once you can do it without thinking, your improvement basically flatlines.
So the goal of deliberate practice is to never let that happen, to stay out of the autonomous phase.
Exactly. Top achievers force themselves to stay in that effortful, uncomfortable cognitive phase. And they do it by, first, focusing intensely on technique. Second, by constantly pushing themselves just beyond their current comfort zone. And third, by getting constant, immediate feedback on what they're doing wrong.
So for a memory athlete, the training itself, the act of creating these bizarre images, is a form of deliberate practice.
It has to be. You can't successfully create an image of Claudia Schiffer dripping with cottage cheese if you're not paying full, focused attention to what you're trying to encode. The technique itself is a mandatory attention filter.
It's a profound thought. The training isn't just about the trick. It's about forcing yourself to pay attention, which is the absolute foundation of memory in the first place.
You have to encode it elaborately if you ever want to retrieve it efficiently.
So now that we get the technique and the science, what about the utility? This art of memory seems to have faded away as we developed external aids, like writing.
Well, that debate goes all the way back to ancient Rome. The big conflict was between memoria rerum versus memoria verborum.
Which is memory for the gist of something versus memory for the exact words.
Right. Memory for content versus verbatim, word-for-word recitation. And the great orator Cicero was a huge proponent of memoria rerum.
He thought it was more practical.
Much more. He believed the most effective use of memory was structural. Memorize your key points, your arguments, your counter-arguments. That allows you to be fluid and flexible during a debate.
But his contemporary Quintilian was much more skeptical of word-for-word memorization.
He was. He thought memoria verborum was mostly for show. You needed it for, say, reciting poetry or quoting a legal text exactly, but it was incredibly risky.
Why?
Because it required this gigantic, complex memory palace. And if you forgot just one single word, you were stuck. You'd be staring at a blank spot in your palace, and your entire speech would just grind to a halt. It was too rigid.
And yet, this ancient art is actually being resurrected today in a very modern context. Foer finds this teacher in the Bronx, Raymond Matthews.
Raymond Matthews is a fascinating guy. He teaches at a high-poverty school, and he started using these advanced mnemonic techniques because he believes memory training is a literal ticket out for his students.
He completely rejects the modern idea that learning and memorizing are somehow opposite.
His argument is so strong. He says, you can't have understanding without facts. You can't analyze information if you haven't put it in your brain first. The more you know, the more you memorize, the easier it is to learn and understand more.
So he has his students memorize huge chunks of text.
Entire paragraphs from complex works like Heart of Darkness. He believes it gives them legitimacy, analytical power. And he uses the same bizarre,
Mm.
elaborative encoding from the memory palace to make it stick.
There's an example in the book about teaching the economics of Lenin and Stalin.
Yes, he turns these dry, abstract political science concepts into unforgettable images. For Lenin's mixed economy policies, he has the students visualize Lenin himself sitting constipated on a toilet because his economy was stuck between capitalism and communism. It's crude, but it works.
It's amazing. And all of this brings us back to that historical fear of external memory, starting with writing itself.
The famous story from Plato's Phaedrus, where Socrates talks about the invention of writing, the god Thuth offers it to King Thamus.
And the king is worried.
He's worried it will implant forgetfulness, that it will turn true internal memory into mere reminding by looking at external marks. He feared people would have the semblance of wisdom without any actual internal knowledge.
And in a way, he was right. But what's so paradoxical is that the art of memory had its greatest renaissance after the invention of the printing press.
Just as memory was being offloaded onto the page, the quest to perfect internal memory became this profound cultural obsession.
And that quest reached its absolute peak of ambition and maybe absurdity with Giulio Camillo.
Divine Camillo. He was a 16th century humanist who took the memory palace metaphor and decided to make it a literal physical building.
The theater of memory.
Exactly. It was this round, seven-tiered wooden building designed for only one person to stand inside at a time, the meditator.
And all of human knowledge would be laid out around them.
Arranged in these emblematic images and drawers, all categorized by mythological figures, the goal was insane. It was to create a system where, by meditating on a single image, the entirety of human knowledge on that topic, history, philosophy, science, would just flood into your mind.
A secret key to the universe, filed away in a mental and physical cabinet.
It just shows how deeply our culture was once tied to these internal systems of knowledge before we offloaded it all to screens.
Which brings us back to the competition and Foer's journey to the championship.
Right. And he wins. He wins the U.S. Memory Championship and even sets a new American record in speed cards. But to do that, he had to graduate from the simple memory palace.
He had to use the most advanced system there is.
The Person Action Object System, or PAO.
Okay, you have to break this down for us. How does PAO work?
It's the ultimate form of chunking. Instead of one image for one card, you combine 3 cards into a single dramatic image. You pre-memorize a specific person, a specific action, and a specific object for every single card in the deck.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, let's say your person for the King of Spades is Elvis Presley. Your action for the 5 of Clubs is moonwalking. And your object for the 2 of Hearts is a giant, skin-toned catsuit.
Okay, got it. Bizarre, but I'm with you.
So the first 3 cards you're dealt are King of Spades, 5 of Clubs, 2 of Hearts. Instead of 3 images, you combine them. You see Elvis Presley, P, doing the moonwalking, A, action to the catsuit.
One image for 3 cards. You've just tripled your efficiency.
You've reduced the cognitive load by a factor of 3. It allows the mental athletes to encode a full 52-card deck using only 17 or 18 images, which is well within their working memory's capacity if they're fast enough.
It's an incredible upgrade to the mental software. But after all this training, after winning the whole thing, Foer comes to this really profound, paradoxical conclusion.
He does. He realizes that despite becoming the U.S. memory champion, his general everyday memory was still, in his words, shoddy.
He still lost his car in the parking lot.
He still forgot things. His working memory for unstructured, random information was still limited by that magical number 7. He could double his digit span in a competition, but the underlying cognitive hardware, it hadn't changed at all.
So the real transformation wasn't a universal upgrade to his brain.
No. The transformation was the realization that this kind of memory is a skill. It's something you build through relentless, deliberate practice. And that offers this incredible insight into human potential.
The limits are not what we think they are.
The gap between the expert and the novice isn't about innate talent. It's about strategy, and it's about effort.
This has been such a fascinating journey through the mind. So, to quickly summarize, we started with the story of S, whose perfect memory was actually a curse that prevented abstract thought.
Then we saw the amnesiacs, EP and HM, whose damaged brains revealed the crucial difference between our conscious, explicit memory and our unconscious, implicit habits and skills.
We learned the secret weapon of the mental athletes is the ancient memory palace, which hijacks our brain's natural talent for spatial navigation.
And finally, we saw how the science of expertise, from Erickson, show that what looks like a feat of genius is actually just the result of chunking and thousands of hours of deliberate practice.
Ultimately, the big takeaway is that memory is the essence of expertise, and that it's a skill that can be trained, proving that our cognitive limits are much more flexible than we assume.
It leaves you with a big question, though. All the technologies that supplement our memory, from the alphabet all the way to cloud storage, they've made our world possible. But they've also changed how we use our brains.
And that's only going to accelerate.
Right. As researchers start exploring things like cognitive implants that could merge our minds with digital memory banks,
Yeah.
you have to ask, if you can have a mind that taps directly into all of human knowledge, what's the cost? What happens to the uniquely human act of remembering?
The profound question to take with you: the next time you encounter a challenge that seems to require innate genius, remember that the most incredible feats of the human mind are usually just the result of a conscious strategy applied with relentless, deliberate practice. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive. If you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It really supports the show and keeps you updated on future episodes.